Hi, good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you to this ISACA event being hosted by Verizon. And I would like to take a moment to thank Richard Montgomery, Tony Judd, and other Verizon staff who are here, including speakers, that has helped to make this event happen. Next London event will be on 20th of February, and that will be in London Science Gallery at the same time, starting at 6 o'clock. And obviously, you will earn 2 CP points as you do for every London chapter event. There will be future events soon published on the website, and you will be communicated about these future events through newsletter as well. Not to forget to mention that you also have recordings of events available to view, and we also have implemented Workcast, a new tool by which you can not only watch the previous videos, but also earn CP points. So please spread the word. And there's a lot more coming in 2020, thanks to events team. But now without further ado, I will pass it on to Paul to introduce NECA for nomination process.
So NECA is just going to run through briefly the nominations process for 2020. And this is the official start of the process and what it involves and the various stages. So NECA, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to today's event. Today, this is the third time or the third round of being the chair of the Board Nominations Committee for ISACA. I will run you through the nominations process for 2020, which isn't dissimilar for what we've done for, or what I have done for 2018, 2019, and then 2020. Okay, I have been a long-standing member of ISACA. I joined ISACA about 10 years ago when I was in corporate life. And I left corporate life, or full-time corporate life, at the board of one of the leading IT companies, Sopra Steria, and then volunteered to be part of the ruling or governing body for ISACA. In the time I have been a member or an active member of ISACA, I found it extremely useful. That is not to say that I didn't find it useful in corporate life, because I worked in governance risk assurance, and but I found it particularly useful for me now as I sit on boards and I have a portfolio career in boards. The chapter is run by the board. The board is the highest governing body and holds the accountability and responsibility for running this chapter. As I understand it, this chapter is one of the largest, deep, am I right? The largest chapters, one of the largest chapters, exactly. And we operate in association with the larger ISACA body, which is run out of the States. And as I understand it, Deep, or I know that Deep and a few of the past presidents attend and are very, very closely aligned. So what we do on the board is very closely aligned to what we do on a global level. So as I said before, the board is the heart of ISACA chapter. It is responsible for running the chapter, all these events you see put on, ensuring that we have the right levels of involvement and engagement with our members, our membership body. Unlike listed companies, or very similar to listed companies, we are accountable to the membership rather than the stakeholders. So the board operates and ensure that we are giving the members value for money. When you pay your subscription, you want to ensure you're getting value for money. The constitution of the board, or the composition of the board, is made up of volunteers. So everybody serving on the board is a member in good standing of ISACA, but volunteering their time. This can be a or I would say everybody I have spoken to who has sat on the board previously or still sits on the board finds it an invaluable experience being on the board, being able to contribute to the chapter, being able to be part of the decision-making that does advance what it is we do, audit, risk, security, governance, and privacy as well, and working with a cohort of really good people. Board members also receive 20 CPE points for their involvement in the board and the experience of actually sitting at the helm of an organization and a large chapter such as ISACA London. How do you become involved is what I'm going to explain to you. This is the official kickoff meeting, but we published, I'm sure you must have seen in the newsletters, the adverts that have gone out for the vacant roles. I will run you through the process and urge you to consider joining or applying for the roles that we have available, okay? So the nominations pack, it was published in the mid-January to all ISACA members. The NOMCO process, which you can find on the website, contains the entire timetable, all the key milestones we need to be met. The board nominations form as well is also part of that pack. The terms of reference, so understanding what it is expected of you as an applicant for a potential board role, but also not just what we expect from you in terms of what is written in the board, the role descriptions, but the commitment of time and your expertise to serve. The current roles we have for 2020 and 2021 are for directors. We have 2 director roles, the company secretary role, which is a very important role, liaising with Companies House, because I must say, I'm omitted to say that we are bound by the rules and the governing rules, and we work in deference to Companies House. And a director for marketing as well. In terms of the apprentices, we've had the apprentices running for about 4 years now, deep, if I'm right, yeah? And the apprentices are a pool or a talent pool that serve as almost directors in waiting. The apprentices volunteer their time, but also shadow or understudy a director, and it's usually used as a throughput to the director role. So we always have a talent pool of apprentices who find their roles very invaluable. The apprentice roles we have are the academic relations, the apprentice for academic relations, the apprentice for company secretary, the apprentice for membership certification and training, and external relations. All of these roles have become available as part of this round, but I must say that during the year, the course of the year, directors may, due to life, things happening, people leaving the country and stuff, may opt to leave the board or step down from the board, and then we're always looking to replace them. So we're never short of seeking a talent pool. So even if you're applying for these roles and you don't get these roles, it's always encouraged to get involved. Now, we also encourage, over the last 2 years or last 3 years, we've focused on getting more women to sit on the board, as well as having a diverse board. But a diverse board not just from racial and gender, but also bringing the intellect as well to the board. We've been quite successful in that, and we urge everybody to consider taking on a role in the board, because you do add value, and it's an opportunity to, if you have aspirations to ascend to a board level, within your own organizations, it's always really invaluable experience. The board nominations timetable, as I said, started off in January and ends in May with the AGM. The recruitment process, the board roles are open until the end of February. Interviews take place in March. And in April, we, the nominations committee, working with the board, present the board slate following our interviews to the board, for the board to approve or endorse the board slate. After that, before the AGM, 2 weeks before the AGM, the board slate is published to all members. So all members can see the board before, or the proposed board before we go to AGM. And at the AGM, the membership approve the board for the 2021 cycle. The Board Nomination Committee, so myself as the chair of the Board Nominations Committee, we have two external members who do not sit on the board. So myself and Saab. Is Saab around today? No, he's not. Okay. So myself and Saab serve on the Board Nominations Committee, and then Deep, who is the president, Shri, as we have here, and Ken, who are members of the board, also serve as part of the Board Nominations Committee. The Board Nominations Committee typically sits about once a month, but during the recruitment cycle, so between once the nominations have been announced, we sit a bit more frequently. If you have any questions, feel free to ask myself, Deep, Ken is there as well. Shri is not here, and Saab is not here. So myself, Deep, and Ken. So feel free to speak to us after the event today, or any of the ISACA London directors. So can we have a show of hand of the directors, please? Present? Yes, sorry, board members or apprentices, yes. So, okay. Okay, Olivia, yes, okay, I can see you. And yes, okay, yep. So feel free, or in the event that you may not get a chance you need to leave shortly thereafter the event, feel free to email. The email there is admin. I mean, you've all received emails from admin, so you should have that. And any of the NOMCO members, you can arrange a one-to-one call with myself or any of the NOMCO members to ask any questions you may do, or ask them via email. So I cannot stress the importance of the value that the board adds to the running of ISACA. I can't stress the importance of getting to understand. There's no way better than to get to understand the association you have joined by actually volunteering to serve. I've enjoyed doing it for the last 3 years. I look forward to getting applications or receiving applications from a diverse mix of the membership. And I look forward most of all to working with you if you so choose to be part of the 2020-2021 board nominations process. Thank you.
Thank you, Neka.
Thank you.
Just while he's being mic'd up, just a very brief intro to our first speaker this evening. So Gabrielle, or Gab Leperlier, who's flown in from France to present to us this evening, is currently head of payment system security assurance services for EMEA at Verizon. His experience, he's had 11 years within Verizon Enterprise Solutions. Prior to time with Verizon, he was in the French Air Force, and including operations in former Yugoslavia. So this evening, Gabrielle will be speaking on the Verizon Payment Security Controls Report 2019.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. So as Deep said and Paul said, I will present you our 2019 Payment Security Report. So thanks to coming to Verizon to this evening. First, the usual safe harbor statement. So by compiling our data, we are doing some forward-looking statement of what should arrive in the near future. So of course, we may be wrong. So that's why we put this safe harbor statement. But of course, we are trying to give you as much insight as possible on what's going on in the payment security landscape and the PCI DSS compliance. So who am I? In fact, I'm leading the PCI security assurance team for Verizon in EMEA. That means that I'm the manager for all the PCI QSA delivering in Europe. So basically, you have a team of PCI QSA here in UK, mostly based in London. But we also have PCI QSA in France, Netherlands, Finland, Italy, Germany. So we covered world Europe, and I'm responsible for all these guys. And also I put there our contact detail, paymentsecurity@verizon.com, so that if you have any question about the payment security report or about PCI or any need, you can contact us. Do not hesitate. So first, let's get back in, let's say, in the past, and just by reading, I guess you all have, yes, the hard copy of the Payment Security Report. If you just go back to all the reports we produced the last 10 years, so we started with the PCI report in 2010, and we called it Payment Security Report since last year. Just by reading these books, just by reading the summary of this report, you can see the evolution of PCI DSS around the globe. Why? Because when you see, for example, 2010, it was the start of PCI DSS. PCI DSS started around like 2008 or something. So in 2010, PCI DSS was more about complexity. Yeah, people were asking, why do I need to go to PCI? It's very complex. Can you explain to me what needs to be done? And the years passing by, we went from, is it complex? We went to, okay, I understand, I need to go to PCI, but how can I simplify the complexity? How I can reduce the scope? Then 5 years later, the first early adopters of PCI DSS started to be compliant, but they started to realize that it's not about only getting compliant, it's also about being sustainable. That means we need to keep compliance. 2016, we also pointed that, in fact, many PCI DSS compliance teams within banks, payment security, gateway, merchants, they had some PCI security team, but there was a lack of proficiency. So that means that, for first 5 years, they bought IDS, they bought SIEM, they bought any kind of new firewalls, they did segmentation, but in the end, they were lacking proficiency just to be able to operate, just to be able to, when you have an alert, you need to know what really need to be done. And so the last 2 years, we are putting, we are putting effort on explaining to customers that you need also to have, even if you put security control in place, this needs to be sustainable. And what is a good security control? So this is our main topics for the last 2 years, control effectiveness, how to do that. So there's a lot to do, a lot to say about our report. And my goal tonight is to make you, let's say, after this meeting, I would like you to, okay, I will go to the book and search what is interesting for me. So what's in this report? First, this is the first time since 2010. This is the first time we included other PCI QSA contributors. So since last year, it was only Verizon, let's say Verizon data, what we gathered during our audits globally in APAC, America, and Europe. But this year, we also had 4 other QSA companies, so Control Scan, Forgenix, Megaplan IT, and Scanman. These 4 companies gave us their data about PCI DSS compliance, and so the results are the compilation, let's say, the gather of all this information. So it's not only Verizon now, it's also other QSA, and we will try to improve this. So if you are working for PCI QSA or PCI QSA, it's a call to contribute. So we will be looking for more contributors in the future. The data set to make this report is made of more than 300 engagements, so 300 audits around the globe. So it's more like 50% of them are in America, 30-something in Europe, and 20-something or less in APAC. In this report, you will see that you will have a global state of compliance by requirement. So if you know PCI DSS or standard, you will see that for each chapter, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, up to chapter 12, you have what we saw during our assessment. And you will be able also to see what is really useful, what we think is really useful is the correlation between data breaches and the PCI DSS compliance. Just after my presentation, you will have Phil, that is from the VTrack team. So they are doing forensics investigation after a breach. So basically, this report is making the correlation between what we see on the field when doing the PCI assessment and what the VTrack team sees after a breach. So that's really interesting. And you will also have a playbook on how to be prepared for incident response, how to manage your incident response plan, how to do a tabletop exercise on how to test your PCI, let's say your incident response plan. So I think it's very useful for you as well. We have something also on mobile security. Why? Because we have more and more connected devices. We have the mobile phone, of course, smartphone, laptop, tablets, and all these devices are connected 24 hours a day to internet. And these devices are also connected to your internal network or your company. So that's why we decided to put something on mobile security. So all this topic is covered in this report, but tonight, as I don't have time to go in deep and it would take me hours to do so, I decided to focus on one element, which is the maturity, the program, how to run, let's say, a maturity program that will help you to maintain the PCI DSS compliance. So I will focus on this part this evening. So, of course, by doing our assessment, we realized that there are some data protection problems. The first one, as I told you, is the sustainability of the control. That means without sustainability, the controls are just ineffective, and I will show you some example in the next slide. Of course, this sustainability, this lack of sustainability is not a matter of one factor, it's a matter of lots of factors, and I will try to give you some example on this. And you also see that we did a survey. I think it was during last year. We did a survey on our customer, and we asked them about what is the maturity of your program, what is the maturity of your IT security. And we realized that none of our customers says that their data protection compliance maturity is optimized. Zero, none of them. And only 20% of them says, oh yeah, we have a data protection program that is kind of mature. You know, that's very small. That means that people, even our customer or the people we ask are CISO, security officers, so there are people in the security space, right? And they really think that their data protection compliance program is very not mature at all. So that's why in this report, you will see that there is lots of explanation and we will give you a framework to evaluate your maturity of your data protection program, and we'll give you insight on how to improve this maturity. That's the goal of, let's say, one of the main goals of this report. So if you are interested in this, I guess you will have a good lecture. But each time we are issuing this report, people are asking for, oh, so what? What about the compliance? Are we compliant? Are the customer compliant? And we saw that since last year, the compliance of our customer was declining regarding the protection of payment card data. So the first, you see in between 2016 and 17, it was a small decline. And this year, it's a drop, 15% drop in compliance. So why? Maybe because also we, as I said before, we introduced data from other QSA, right? So we were like 50-something compliant for our customers, and suddenly we incorporated the data for other QSA company, and it's dropping to 36. So that means that maybe the market is even lower than we expected. To give you a more understanding about this number, what is this number? You know that regarding PCI DSS compliance, you need to be compliant and you need to have a yearly assessment. So this number is when we go back for the yearly assessment, we do a first interim assessment and we look, are you still compliant or did you lose compliance? So only 36% of the customers stayed compliant. 63 of them lost their compliance. But the PCI DSS is made that you don't really lose your compliance. I mean, you are compliant for a year. The QSA come back like 9 months later. He starts the new assessment. You are only 36% of them are compliant, but you get 2 months to remediate. So we give you 2 months to fix things. Everything that was going wrong need to be fixed. So you get 2 months to do that. And if after 2 or 3 months you are able to fix everything, then you're still seen as compliant. But you understand that there is an issue in that, because if you lose your compliance during the year, that means you are at risk, right? That means even if you were PCI DSS certified, if you are not doing the correct things, you are not really compliant during the year, so you have a risk of being breached. That's a real issue, and that's really why we try to. That's why I will explain to you in the next slide is our view how to implement a program that will, let's say, make you keep compliance and not dropping compliance during the year. That's the goal. I know also that many people, that works on PCI DSS, they like, where are we struggling and where are we good? So few numbers on that. Maybe I don't know if many of you know the PCI DSS standard by heart and by chapter, but I will help you. So basically, almost all industries, they have a hard time to be compliant to chapter 11. Chapter 11 of PCI DSS compliance is about internal and external vulnerability scans, internal and external penetration testing, IDS, IPS, all this stuff. And it's really, really hard for people to get a clean scan. PCI DSS requires that you have a clean vulnerability scan, internal, external, every quarter. So you need to patch everything. And you see that the 2 chapters where companies struggle more is 11 scanning, pen testing, IDS something, and chapter 6. Chapter 6 is about patching, vulnerability patching. And the combo of the 2, not very good at patching, not very good at vulnerability scanning is something that makes company not secured at all. But few things are going good. No, before I go to the good, I would give you a good example of what kind of discussion I had. I have so many examples, so each time I have a presentation, I need to choose among them. But yesterday, I was talking to a CISO, okay? And I was asking him, we sent you a proposal for penetration testing. Would you, are you going to order this penetration testing? And he was telling, you know what, we are doing small scanning, we are doing small penetration testing, but we found so many vulnerabilities that we are not able to patch them. I have no people to address all these vulnerabilities, so I don't want to do more. So I was like, seriously? But I understand. So he preferred not to see the global picture, because if he sees the global picture, it will be a total mess. So I have the chance to be also in contact with the CEO of this company. So I emailed the CEO of the company, say, hey, your CISO is saying, you don't have resources just to patch the vulnerabilities. And he told me, yeah, I know. So even if the CISO, is talking like that, so you see that patching and scanning, it's a huge challenge for many companies. But few stuff are doing good. Companies are now, when they're working on PCI, quite good in installing and have antivirus, anti-malware running. So that's a good stuff, because if you are trying to also protect yourself about ransomware and everything, you need some basic antivirus and anti-malware stuff installed. And companies are quite doing good as well on restricting access. So the least privilege, need to know. This is, let's say, quite well handled. And depending on which company you are working for, either in your financial institution, retail, hospitality, or IT services, you will see in the report that we have specific number for you. And we also have some supplement where we give some insight on each verticals. So you can give all that. If you don't find it it's all available in PDF on internet, but if you don't find it, just ask and we will send you the PDF. So, as I said, main focus tonight, and I will try to be quick to also give you some time to ask questions. I will focus on how to prepare for sustain your security. First, 5 fundamental principles. Your success in security must be a design and not something by luck. I know that DevSecOps is something every people is talking about, but it's really about that. You need to think about having security by design and nothing, maybe by luck will work. And control may be effective, not just in place. This is something also we see because still some companies, they see PCI DSS compliance as, oh my God, we need to be PCI compliant. So what do I have to check? Check the box. I need to check the box. And sometimes when you just try to check the box, it's not effective. And then you get to the third, the environment must be sustainable. There will be some stuff that will come. We are working in real life. So in real life, there will be some outcome. There will be some issues. There will be some, I don't know, your CISO may resign. You may have people, resigning, or you may have to get rid of someone, or you may have some issues with the service provider that for your security. You may have some event that will, let's say, make your environment not stable, and you need to be prepared for that. And I will give you also some other key to do so. So this is the first question for you guys. So try to be honest and try to think. I will just let you a few seconds to think about it. If you are running a compliance program, so here we are talking about PCI, but it can be any IT security framework compliance program. If you are running a compliance program, where are you in this stage? Where your company is? Are you just trying to reach a compliance, but you're just in remediation? So it's like, my goal is to be compliant, but I'm doing patching, I'm trying to make some policies, so I am still in the remediation phase? Or are you already, let's say, you already reached compliance one time, but you're just trying to validate that you're still compliant? Or are you already starting to build a program to maintain your compliance? Or are you at stage 4? You already compliant, you started to bring a program, but you also started to manage now the performance of your program. You started to see, is your program effective? Does it work really well? And the stage 5 is all of this, but mature, okay? So this is really important because you need to know where you are so that you need to have your roadmap to evolve where what we think is better, of course, is stage 5. So you have here the, let's say, the explanation in more detail where you should be. So I need to be honest with my customers, and I'm working on PCI DSS since 2008, so it's 12 years now, and I'm working not only in France, because I'm from France, you may have already noticed with my accent, but not only in France, but also in UK and other Belgium, I went to many countries to do PCI, and all of my customers are either there or there. Very few are there, very few. Some of them started to run a program, and almost none are there, and I've never seen people there. So, and that's really an issue, because each time we are coming back for the yearly assessment, and we saw, things are not compliant, patch are not made, I don't know, the physical security is not at the expected level, the camera are not functioning anymore. So none of them are running at this stage. So that's why we gave this example, and you have in the report how to, let's say, move from stage 1 to stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, and hopefully one day stage 5. You don't need to aim at stage 5 immediately, but if you have a plan to do, I don't know, in 1 or 2 years to the next stage and next stage and next stage, that would be more than enough, I guess. And this is another question for you, because this is also really important when you will try to achieve the stage 5 of the mature security program. What is for you the biggest problem for your data protection compliance? You know, because many people, as I said, the example of the CISO I just talked to you about, he told me, you know, I have lack of available resources. So that's what we usually hear from our customers. But we know that there is a lack of IT security professionals globally, around the globe. Is that a capability? I mean, do you have resources, but they are not capable? So we are going now back to the proficiency stuff I talked to you about, or competence, lack of skills, knowledge, experience needed, or is it a lack of commitment of your team or C-levels, or is it a lack of communication? So you don't. So you need to know what is your biggest problem. So you need to address them one by one. Why? Because we arrived now to our 954 compliance program. This is well detailed in the report. And last year, we introduced the 9 factors for control effectiveness. And let's say, we add some add-on now. We added the 5 constraints and the 4 lines of assurance. So basically, if you map the 9 factors with the 5 constraints, you have, so 9, 5, 5, so 45 control points to address, okay? And if you map them with the 4 lines of assurance, you have 180 controls that you need to assess. And if you assess these 180 controls, you will have a clear view on where is your compliance program evaluation. And it's really, really important to do so that you have a metric that says, oh, I don't know, my compliance program is like 33, but I need to go to 100 something. So you need to know where you are to be able to be. Why this is important? Because you will be able to identify what needs to be mitigated, identify the constraint, and define and communicate the performance and standard requirements. This is how we do that. So I will go quickly through the framework, how you should do that. So why you should do that? Because, of course, you will have these benefits, you know, asking the right question, correcting your program, and you have this. But who will do this? Who will need to evaluate all this security control in place? You should, of course, have individual accountability from the guys. You should have your risk management and compliance teams that need to do the checks. But you need also an internal audit that is not the same team as a risk management team. And you should have also external auditor or regulator that checks. If you map let's say, the 9 factors of control effectiveness with the 5 constraints, and you have this control by these 4 individual team, you will be able to assess your let's say, compliance program. Here you have an example where, for example, you can see that this one is not correctly done, this one is okay, and this one is still pending evaluation. So I'm going very quickly about that, but you have all the information in the payment security report so that you will be able to evaluate how your compliance program is running. And of course, this will have some immediate benefit because you will have a scope and objective to your compliance program, and also you will be able to solve some issues your IT security should have. I gave you some example here, of course. This is important that you show also to your management and C-level that by implementing the 954 framework, you will have some immediate benefit, and you will be able to solve all this stuff that your company must have, okay? Individual control, control effectiveness not known. In December, I was presenting in a bank institution in France, where in this bank institution, they invited, let's say, big merchant, also, let's say, very big payment service provider. One of them is well known, is one of the biggest payment service provider in the world. And this guy from this huge payment service provider, he was internal security auditor. So this is the let's say the same as it's a PCI QSA but internal, okay, ISA. This guy told me, you know what, we are too big to fail, too big to fail. So basically, they think that they cannot afford to lose the PCI DSS compliance. And so basically, they are putting pressure on the PCI QSA, so we cannot lose the PCI certification. And he was asking myself, and he was asking the PCI SSC, at this time it was Jeremy King in the room. He was asking, you know what, for example, I had an issue with my internal vulnerability scanner and external scanner. I have an issue with my service provider, and I was not able to do any scans for 4 months. So I guess it was, I don't know, commercial issue, technical issue, I don't know. But basically, if you're not able to do scans for 4 months, you're not PCI DSS compliant, right? You cannot achieve Chapter 11, you're not compliant. And they were asking PCI SSC and myself, I was not able to do the scans, and I can prove that I have not been breached. So I need to stay compliant, And my immediate feeling was, this guy is just, because he's this huge payment service provider, he thinks he's too big to fail. He thinks he will never, no QSA will tell him, you're not PCI compliant. So he basically managed it like that, I did not do my scan for 4 months. So what? I'm not being breached. So I think he does not have a mature program. I think his security is not made to be sustainable. Basically, even if your service provider, if you have an issue with your service provider, you should find a solution in less than 4 months. I have some customers telling me, the issue with PCI DSS is that you don't have a time machine, right? So you're not able to go in the past and fix things. And you need to be prepared. If your CISO is resigning, I have a customer, a very huge customer doing call centers, and their CISO left. They had like 3 months to replace their CISO. And during 3 months, most of the security controls were not met during 3 months because the CISO was a keystone of everything, right? And so that means they put some security control in place, but these security control in place are not sustainable at all. That means if your CISO is resigning, it should still work. If your scanner service provider, you don't agree with the service provider, or I don't know, the price or anything, or technical issue, you should be able to do some scan, during 4 months. So it needs to be sustainable. You need to any kind of event, you need to be able to attain the level of security you need. So basically, what did we learn? Very few companies are able to maintain the compliance during the year, only 36% of them. So that means that doing compliance is not a project. It's not a project, and too many companies are still thinking that security is a project. It's not a project, it must be a program. Security testing and patching is the most issue. You need to understand that even during the Black Friday and Christmas holiday, you need to patch and do scannings. I know for some customers it's really difficult for them, but you need to do something. As I said, I did not say it, but America region is lacking behind Europe and APAC. This is the first time we saw that as well. So basically, in America, they were the first companies to go to PCI DSS. So they were the first to go in 2010, 11 to go to PCI DSS. But it's now 10 years later, and they also their compliance is going down. Of course, as I said, most organizations need to improve their program, and I gave you some example. And you, of course, your PCI security program will benefit for a good evaluation framework and better for better security. Here you go. So I hope it was useful for you. So if you have any question, so do not hesitate to ask. Yeah.
Just a simple one. Have you seen a reduction in the number of incidents or breaches with increased maturity and compliance? Can you actually relate the two?
Yeah, the two are really linked. We used to say that, people used to say that even if you are 100%, even if you're compliant, you can be breached. That's true, maybe. But in 100% of the case we investigated, none of them were compliant. Most of them were very far from being compliant. And we really see that we have some customer that, for example, I have an example of this customer that I would say is in stage 3, the stage I presented. He's starting to implement a program. And this customer, we don't have any pending, forensic investigation for this customer, not even small incident. So that means that, yeah, I really think that being mature, having a program is, of course, will be not the perfect shield, but is really important. And we see that some customers don't do any compliance program, and they have breaches, they have incidents. It's not always breaches, but they have security incidents a lot.
Given that most of the companies that are requesting PCI compliance assessments need to be compliant, what do you think are the drivers for why the compliance level is so poor?
You're asking why do they need to go to PCI compliance?
No, why aren't they?
Oh.
Your graph has
In fact,
painted a pretty bleak picture.
Yeah,
Why is that the case after 10 years?
Yeah, in fact, the PCI, as you may have understood how it's working, so you have the payment brands, so American Express, Visa, MasterCard. Depending on if you are a bank or retailer, it's different, or payment service provider is different. If you are a merchant, your compliance is driven by your bank, your acquirer. So basically, Visa, MasterCard, Amex says to your bank, you know what, your merchant need to be compliant. And if your merchant is not compliant, if they are breached, I will give you this fine, 100, 200, 300K, so it can be huge. So basically for the merchants, the pressure, I would say, is just coming from the banks. If your bank, and some banks are not putting any pressure on the merchant, so they don't really have the need to go to PCI compliance, because they don't feel the pressure by the bank. And the bank are not putting pressure, I guess, because it's a market. If you tell this customer, if you put too much pressure on this customer, maybe this customer will go to another bank, right? Maybe. But some banks, they said, oh, you're too risky. You don't go to PCI compliance. You're too risky for me. I will lose lots of money if you are in a breach. Then, you know what? Go to another bank. Okay. So if you're a merchant, it's the pressure need to come from the bank. And we have some customers that don't have any pressure from the bank, so they don't really go for PCI. If you're a service provider or payment service provider, you need to go to PCI because you will have no customer without certification. So that's the perfect driver. No certification, no business. That's cool. And for the bank can assure it. So basically, if there is an issue, they will pay for it, they can assure it, so they don't really need to go for PCI, except that some banks are also service provider for other banks or other merchants, and then they need to go for PCI. So I don't know if I answer your question, but some people go, some people don't, and it really depends on the pressure they get from the bank or the payment brands.
Are you discerning any trends or seeing anything from cloud transformations that are impacting compliance?
Some transformation about?
So with organizations that are making increasing use of the cloud,
oh, cloud.
Are you seeing anything that's having an impact on compliance, or are there particular requirements that are easier or harder to fulfill?
In fact, it depends on how you do it. Some companies, they go to the cloud, they choose a cloud that is PCI DSS compliant, and they think it's a magic bullet. And they say, oh my God, I put everything in the cloud, this cloud is PCI DSS certified, magic bullet. But it's not working like this. Why? Because when you put the machine in the cloud, you're still responsible for some of the aspect of the security. Basically, your cloud provider will provide you some machines, so an environment. They will maybe update the operating system, for example. They may do some, I don't know, log correlation. But if you're putting in the cloud a machine with an application that is vulnerable, they will say, oh my God, it's not my, not my fault. I mean, your application was vulnerable, so you give it breach, but it's your application. So basically what I tell my customer is that even if you go to the cloud, maybe good, maybe not, but you need to have a clear matrix of responsibility. Who is doing what? Is the cloud service provider only responsible for the operating system? Is he responsible for the scanning? Is he responsible for the penetration testing? Because some service providers say, well, we don't do penetration testing. It's your task. We don't do scanning. It's your task. So you need to have clear matrix of responsibility. So yes, I saw many customers going to the cloud because many companies do. But they did not realize at the first sight that going to the cloud is not the magic bullet for PCI. Even if it's not a magic bullet at all, it's really, the cloud, as we said, it's the computer of someone else. So if the computer of someone else if someone else is just doing operating system patching, it will not work. Does it answer your question?
Hi, Gabriel. Really good presentation. You've spoken about when you come and do compliance annually, if some of the companies are not compliant, that you give them some leniency to remediate. You also spoke about, for example, requirement 11, where some of the companies might not be meeting their security scanning requirements, and you mentioned even that example where 4 months that wasn't done. Let's imagine in a scenario where twice out of 4 times a year, that's not done. You come in, you want to certify. How do you ensure that these companies can still be sustainable and they remediate that within a period of 2 months? How does that work?
Yeah, the scanning is I'll not say the gray area, but it's kind of gray area, and you will find many QSA that does not apply the same stuff to the same issue. As I said, you don't have any time machine, right? So basically, if you didn't do the scan, you will not find them, right? So basically, if we follow the rules, you're not compliant. But you will say, okay, but when will I be compliant again? In 1 year? Because you need to, for example, to show 4 quarters of clean scan. So basically, you will say, if you are missing just the last one, I can tell you, but maybe you will be compliant in 3 months or 6 months, 7 months. What we are really doing is that we are trying to sometimes, let's say, shorten the time frame. But we also need the customer to show that first, it's the only issue, because some customers have this issue, but they have many others. So in this case, it's not a big deal. It's no-brainer. They are not compliant. But if we only have this particular issue on scanning, we may try, maybe, for example, to involve field team and say, you know what, let's do a forensic investigation and on this specific scope, and let's see if we have some evidence of a breach. If you have not been breached, if you are telling me that you are doing the proper patching, so maybe it's kind of okay, you'll be compliant. So there is not one size fits all answer. It depends on the customer. It depends on the trust we have as a customer. Because remember, at the end, the PCI QSA sign, you sign as well, or the customer sign as well. But we both signed that we did the proper thing. So I would say that sometimes I tell the customer, sorry about that, you're not compliant. I will explain to your bank that you're not compliant because of the missing scan, but it's actually remediated. So actually the scans are running and everything is clear, but you're still not compliant because of this. And it sometimes works. I mean, the bank says, okay, perfect. But as I said, for the payment service provider, sometimes they say, I can't have a non-compliant AOC because otherwise my customer will not buy anything from me. So sometimes.
There's version 4 of the standard coming out, not before January 2021. Can you elaborate what you expect to be some of the fundamental changes?
Yeah, very quickly. In fact, so we had a first request for comment for PCI 4.0. with all the participating organizations and some QSA company give their feedback. So we will have another request for comment in, let's say, Q2, and indeed, we expect the final version for end of the year. So it's actually secret. I mean, it's confidential, so we can't give too much information. But the main, let's say, the main big stuff that is coming is that PCI SSA introduced what they call the risk-based approach, right? So basically, for each requirement, if you're a company and you say, I can't achieve or I can't do that this way, but I did a risk assessment and I think I can achieve this particular security requirement by doing this, and I will check it by doing this. The QSA can evaluate this new risk-based approach and say, oh yeah, makes sense. I will evaluate this requirement by doing this, or the QSA can reject. I think this is the main, let's say, big change, because it will maybe, and we as a QSA see that as an opportunity, but also we don't really know where we are going, because if the customer says for the 240 requirements that you have 240 risk-based approach, can be outstanding, right? But it will be, from what we saw, it will be a real, 4.0 is a real new version with, everything is renamed, lots of new requirements, a new way of doing, but it's still RFC, request for comment, right? So they can remove lots of the new requirements, they can add new ones, so it's still work in progress, I would say. But you can expect something big, I mean, something really significant, including, hardware, let's say, hard drive encryption instead of application encryption, and, stuff like that, so. We'll see. Yeah.
Hi, I was interested in hearing about the history of how the report has come along. And I guess you and your team have had things to do with that. You've had a lot of input into that, yeah? I'd just like to say I find this year's report by far the best, with lots of useful information in here, which can be used not only for payment security, but much more generally in terms of security. I think this is a really useful book. Well done.
Thank you. And I didn't talk about it, but there's also a page on the CISO activities, and you see that the CISO is overwhelmed. I mean, the CISO is responsible for so many things.
Thank you. There might be additional questions. I'm just thinking of time. So Gabrielle, you're going to be around for the networking session afterwards. So if I can just say thank you to Gabrielle for a great presentation.